You know, if you go through like the Angelina National Forest or even parts of the Sabine National Forest, you see it's a much more park-like landscape. The trees are spaced further apart. They do a lot of frequent fire through there, and that looks more like it would have historically. It's not the same trees. Most of what's on the Angelina National Forest is loblolly pine, and we had historically longleaf pine here. So it looks similar to what it historically was, but we still have some differences. And then we also have agriculture and ranching that has caused some degradation to these habitats. So what we can do and why we want to wildscape is because we can use native plants that are absolutely gorgeous. We can put those in our yard in place of some of our traditional gardening plants, and that can actually create urban habitat for our wildlife and help support a lot of our different wildlife species. And when we're talking about wildscaping, you don't have to do this on a huge scale. It can be something as simple as putting in a planter with a couple of native flowers to support some of our butterflies, or you can expand it to your entire yard. It's really kind of up to you and available to you. And like I mentioned earlier, it's just really important to support our wildlife, and making even small changes can help facilitate that. And then the other thing is, you know, it just helps in addition to all the habitat degradation and everything else. You know, we're in the middle of climate change. And there's some research that shows just small changes in your habits, what you do on a daily basis, can help mitigate some of that. There's some really interesting stuff, not necessarily related to wildscapes, but like apparently if everyone in the world painted their house, their rooftops white, it would completely reverse climate change, is what they just kind of came out with. So just interesting little information. So right now, this is our hottest summer of the year, hottest summer we've had, and hottest summer so far. Potential climate effects are going to affect us, but they're also going to affect the wildlife, and so that's why providing that habitat for them is important, because we want to have resilient ecosystems. So not necessarily that the ecosystem stays the same, because I mean even historically no ecosystem stayed the same forever. There were wildfires, there were floods, there were things that happened, but we want to build the ecosystem up so that we don't have cataclysmic effects when a change does happen. So we want that ecosystem to be resilient and to be able to bounce back from change or from a disaster, and these wildscapes can be a part of that. And just, so sorry, this ended up being smaller than I thought it was, and it was hoping it would show up a little bit better on this one, but it's not, so that is my bad. But why are we wanting to wildscape? And there's a couple different reasons. You know, I know this is a garden club, I know everyone likes to be outside in their garden, but wildscaping, you could actually spend less time in your garden, so that may be a negative for you guys, but they're a little bit lower maintenance. You don't have to go out, you're not having to do all the pruning, you're not having to do as much watering, you're not having to, you know, just go out there and care for things quite as much. And that's because they're native to this area and they're locally adapted. So they're gonna use less water, you're not gonna have to fertilize, just in general, things like that. Part of them needing less water is because their native root systems actually go quite a bit deeper than some of your non-native plants. For example, our native grasses, we're thinking about our blue stems and things like that, they can have root systems that are longer than I am. So they go very, very deep into the soil. Those deeper root systems obviously are an adaptation to help them get water in drier conditions like we have during our summers. But then on top of that, they actually provide a lot of benefits to your soil, because not only do those root systems go deeper, but because those root systems go deeper, they actually help water infiltration into the soil. So instead of like your sod-forming grasses or some of your other flowers, where the rain lands on your lawn and runs straight off because it's sod forming, the water doesn't infiltrate down very well. With your native plants, it will hit the ground and actually filters down into the soil. So it helps with your soil infiltration. It also helps with your soil erosion. So these native plants actually clump up and hold on to soil a little bit better. So you're not losing topsoil, you're not losing that, you know, important material for growing plants. And then that in turn helps benefit the water In the United States, all over the United States, we've lost approximately 56% of our wetlands. And then a lot of our other wetland habitats are severely degraded. Like if you think about that, we have the dead zone out in the Gulf from the Mississippi River, and a lot of that is due to sedimentation and chemicals that wash into our waterways and then end up in the ocean and are concentrated, and we have oxygen depletion and fish die-offs because of that. And these native plants can help mitigate that, because not only are they trapped in the soil, so they're stopping the erosion, which stops the sedimentation, they can also act as filtration for the chemicals. But because we're not putting as many chemicals on our lawns or on as many fertilizers on some of our plants, we're actually lowering the amount of chemicals that run off into our waterways. I think it is, I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember statistics for you guys. About half of all fertilizer applied to our native lawn, or not our native lawns, I'm sorry, our lawns, like we have like San Augustine grasses and sod forming grasses, runs off into a waterway. And it's about 10 times as much as what is put into like a crop and agrarian system, just running off those lawns. So if we can reduce and mitigate some of those chemicals and some of those fertilizers, phosphorus and nitrates are particularly bad in our waterways because they can cause algal blooms and then resulting fish die-offs, and you know, it's a whole system. Like the resiliency I talked about, it's a cascade effect. One thing goes wrong, and because the ecosystem's not super healthy, so many other things go wrong with it. So that's pretty well a couple benefits of wildscaping and why it's good to kind of add some natives into your garden. So for wildscaping, you pretty well have three basics. You need food, water, and shelter to benefit your wildlife. Why do we need that?